I'll call this meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is an open meeting of the Seward, Nebraska governing body. The city of Seward abides by the Nebraska Open Meetings Act in conducting business. A copy of the Nebraska Open Meetings Act is displayed on the north wall of this meeting room facility as required. Disclosure of meeting recording processes is also posted in the meeting room. A participant sign-in sheet is available for use by any citizen addressing the council. Presenters shall approach the podium, state their name and address for the clerk's record, and are asked to limit remarks to 5 minutes. All remarks shall be directed to the mayor, who shall determine by whom any appropriate response shall be made. The city of Seward reserves the right to adjust the order of items on this agenda if necessary, and may elect to take action on any of the items listed. Please call the roll.
Fett.
Here.
Colterman.
Yes, present.
Streisand.
Here.
Camperin. Here. Singleton.
Here.
Hendricks.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Wilkin.
Here.
All right, the first items on the agenda are the consent agenda.
Second.
A motion and a second, any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor: Wilkin, Beck, Camperth, Colterman, Miller, Singleton, Streisand, Hendricks, 8-0.
Next, we have public hearings. We have the tax increment financing TIF application by IHC Properties LLC. Andrew Willis is here with us this evening. Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you, Mayor. All right, good evening. Yeah, the project before you today, IHC Properties Project 2, another project in the rail yard. Obviously, council's familiar with it because the purchase agreement's been through the council, but the TIF application was submitted, and we now have a redevelopment plan amendment proposed and redevelopment agreement tonight. It's been through CRA and Planning Commission, all approvals, recommendation from Planning Commission, approval by CRA, so this comes with full approval before the council. Again, 836 Aspen Street, IHC Properties is the redeveloper. The proposed project is about a 37,000 square foot commercial manufacturing building. It's going to be heat exchanger fabrication repair business. They will be starting out with really housing about 27,500 square feet, primarily with about 10,000 square feet to expand or to be used by an additional tenant in that another use. But so that's but again, primary use would be that heat exchanger fabrication business. The construction schedule on this, they're ready to start building. Whenever, if this is approved, I think it starts. We have spring or summer 22. I think it's as soon as possible to finish up by the end of the year. That gives, from a TIF perspective, an effective date of January 1st of 2023. So our 15-year clock starts then. Base value on this lot is $93,800. Based on the assessor's initial preliminary appraisal, the final valuation would be $2,272,724. Based on that spread, that increment, we'll get that in the cost benefit analysis, but essentially that's where we came up with our $395,400 in TIF amount. They listed in their application about $464,678 in estimated eligible expenses. So, and it's the standard ones. We got site acquisition, site prep, grading, architectural, engineering, legal fees. So nothing unusual there. Looks, again, pretty straightforward as far as the eligible cost. And obviously, when we look at our statutory elements for the TIF property acquisition. Purchasing it from the city, so that's been through the normal process. We just note that nothing's done in this redevelopment agreement went through the normal processes. It's a commercial project, so we're not really worried about population density. 37,500 square foot building on about 2.46 acres, so no issues from land coverage. We have in the agreement, based on the projected uses right now, that they would require 31 parking spaces, and they'll meet that. And again, just a reminder that this approval doesn't change anything that would happen on a building code level. So if it's, you know, if they change the use slightly, or, you know, that other 10,000 square feet, or something happened, they're required, this doesn't change anything from a building code, or, you know, zoning, or any other approvals at all. All of our plan here is just a plan. But it's, permitted use, industries, permitted in the BP Business Park District zone out there, so, but again, no issues there. Got the preliminary site plan, and this came up, I mean, obviously, I don't know that I need to bring this up again to the council, because it came from the council, but just so you know, it came up in both CRA and Planning Commission. They asked kind of, location versus design, and I know my understanding is that this lot was specifically chosen based on design, that more industrial look and how it fits in better in that location versus other locations, but, but both CRA and Planning Commission had asked about that, and there was no concerns other than just, it was a question that was raised. When we look at the cost benefit analysis, so we start with our tax shift, base value $93,800. The completed valuation from the assessor was $2,272,724, so we have our incremental value of just under $2.2 million, $2,178,724. That gives us our annual tax increment of $37,786. That's what we're looking at over the 15-year period. When we look at the cost benefit analysis, we had a cost benefit analysis for the rail yard in general, and so this really plays into that. There's not much from that would be unexpected. This obviously fits in very well with the plan for the rail yard. This business fits in well, and the purpose of that rail yard is to continue this commercial growth, and that's the area designated for that. So there's not anything unusual I would point out in that. Any questions specifically on the plan, or I'll jump into the redevelopment agreement and I can answer all questions later. I'll go to the agreement and I'll answer questions. Agreements just we obviously always take the amendment to the redevelopment plan and we put this into the contract form. So we got the effective date of January 1st, 2023, like I said, with the idea that they're gonna finish up construction by the end of the year. We have our minimum project valuation at $2,272,724. That's the value they'll hit in order to meet the TIF we projected out. Now, if they don't meet the TIF we projected out, it's all the risk on the redeveloper anyway. So in section 3, the TIF that's authorized here is $395,400. If we look back at Exhibit B, and we did that. We based our projections on a 5% interest rate over the 15-year period. Otherwise, I'm gonna go to the exhibits real fast to make sure I didn't miss anything. Otherwise, form-wise, this looks pretty standard. Again, all the uses are very standard. Commercial building in the rail campus. It's fits in really well. We have our TIF uses and sources and uses in Exhibit C. Been through those. Again, they have $464,000 listed. But I'm happy to answer any questions you have about this project.
Any questions from the council for Andrew? Not seeing Carl?
I'd say the only one, and this is just for my knowing, is in Appendix B. They have basically the plat drawing of it, and the building's on the west side of the lot, and then like the architectural views on the east side of the lot. Which side of the lot is that actually going to be on?
It's actually going to be on the west side.
Okay.
And I can speak to that, to the rationale behind that as well.
Well, they just had both, so that's why I was
Okay, yeah.
curious on which one it was actually going to end up being.
Any other questions? If not, I'll open up the public comment portion of the public hearing. If anyone from the public wishes to speak on this item, please come forward at this time. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Mayor, members of council.
State
my
your
name's-
name and address, please.
Yeah, my name is Troy Bridgeford. My home address is 1862 Harwood Street, Lincoln, Nebraska, 68502. Thank you for your time tonight. Here to talk about that expansion project that we're putting over there again. Like Andrew said, this is a 37,000 square foot building. The first 27,000 is being taken over by a tenant that we're within spitting distance of having the first 10-year lease fully negotiated. We're hoping by the end of this week that all the final buttons are put in. Now, this is a total investment of roughly $3.65 million that we are bringing to help bring this organization to the community. What's really exciting about it, not gonna say their name, but what's really exciting about them is they actually, they selected Seward because of the team that your community put together to propose to them, because there's actually a direct competition between the city of Seward and the city of Lincoln. And between what your team did here in Lincoln, as well as the little bit of support that we provided, they actually selected Seward as their landing zone. All of the rest of their plants in the United States are essentially right along the coasts, but then they also have locations around the world. Now, most of what they're going to be focusing on here in the Midwest is to facilitate heat exchanger repair, replacement, refabrication for ethanol plants and other large industrial facilities around the area. So we're really excited because it's a value add to the community, and it also supports a lot of what the state of Nebraska supports as well. As part of our negotiation with them, we had to get to a certain price point, of course, lease. And when you take $3.65 million and trying to get that down in price, the TIF is a huge help in allowing us to actually get down to the base starting rate that they were trying to get. They were not successful in getting to that rate in Lincoln, which is also part of the money when they selected Seward. So at this point, we are ready to go. We're most of the way through architect engineering, civil engineering drawings, and everything. We're ready to get started. It's just a matter of getting all the rest of these finishing touches put in. You have any questions?
Yes, Ellen?
Can you speak to the number of jobs that would be created and to the pay range for those jobs?
So pay range I can't, but it's minimum of 15 people starting. Now, that's for the first 25,000. At month 18, every time they open up the new facility, they start off in roughly 27,000 square feet. And then 18 months later, once they have all their process, everybody trained up, then they expand. So that's why we went to the 37,000 square foot instead of just sticking at the 27, right? So at that point, probably another 5, 10, I'm speculating, I can't really speak to that. And pay ranges, I don't know, did you ever hear?
And it'll be competitive in the market.
I don't know what the market is for this. But it works, yeah, I guess.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you. Does anyone else from the public wish to speak on this item? Seeing no one else, I will close the public comment portion of the public hearing and return to Andrew. Did you want to add anything before we go to the resolutions?
Not unless you have other questions.
Any other questions? We'll just move to item D, which is consideration of a resolution approving the redevelopment plan amendment and adopting a cost-benefit analysis for the redevelopment project. Any questions or comments, or would someone like to introduce the resolution?
I'll introduce the resolution.
All right. The resolution has been introduced and is designated as resolution number 2022-19. Would anyone like to move that this resolution be passed and adopted?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wilken, Beck, Campereth, Colterman, Miller, Singleton, Streisand, Hendricks, 8-0.
All right, item E, consideration of a resolution approving the redevelopment plan agreement for a redevelopment project, including the issuance of TIF indebtedness for the redevelopment project and other such actions under the community development law. Any other questions or comments, or would someone like to introduce the resolution?
I'll introduce the resolution.
The resolution has been introduced and is designated as resolution number 2022-20. Would anyone like to move that this resolution be passed and adopted?
I so move.
Second.
A motion and a second. Please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wilken, Beck, Campereth, Colterman, Miller, Singleton, Streisand, Hendricks, 8-0.
Thank you, Andrew. Item number 2, public hearing. Special use permit for 1313 West Highway 34 to allow installation of a utility hut for Allo Communications in a UC Urban Corridor District. Tim Dworick, welcome.
Thank you. This is an application by the property owner for the purpose of locating a central communication hut for all of Allo's communication structure. They need one central hut that runs the entire city. They were looking for a spot within the city limit, and they reached out to Brian Fellhofer and his property. One of the caveats with Brian's property is back in 2007, there was a fire on the location. The site had never been cleaned up. He was served a letter back in 2017, and the property still hadn't been cleaned up. I spoke with him. Within the next 2 weeks, he cleaned up the property and conformed with what was asked of him of the letter. There was a pit there, he filled the pit. We spoke to him about future development on the property, as apparently there's interest by another developer, and see how that would work, how this aloe hut would fit with that development and drainage and everything for the future. That did not hamper his negotiations, he's still negotiating. With that, they submitted a site plan. There was an issue with the buffer between existing residential and the new structure. They moved that 15 foot to the north to create that buffer, and so now they comply with the zoning for that structure. And with that, Planning Commission unanimously approved it.
Thanks, Tim. Any questions or comments from the council?
Is the cables or whatnot that's gonna come in and out, is that mostly overhead or underground?
Both.
It's both?
Well, it'll probably come in underground to the hut, is my understanding.
And you don't foresee any issues with that as far as other existing utilities in the winter?
No, not this time, so.
Any other questions or comments from the council? Seeing none at this time, I'll go ahead and open up the public comment portion of the public hearing. If anyone wishes to comment on item number 2, please come forward. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Eichmeyer, Seward City Council. My name is Andrew Vinton. My home address is 2600 South 14th Street, Lincoln, Nebraska, 68502. I'm the in-house legal counsel for Allo Communications, and just here today to answer any questions you have about our special use permit. As Tim said, this is a fiber hut. This is the central switching office for all of our fiber optic communications cables in town. I think there's a picture of it in your agenda tonight there. It's essentially a windowless building, usually about 40 by 15 feet. It contains electronics, computers, serves as a data bunker, and really just has to be hooked up to electricity to work. I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Andrew. Any questions from the council for Andrew? Seeing none, thank you.
I just
Oh,
have-
wait 1 second. Yes.
What's the term of your lease with the property owner on this?
I believe the term of our lease is, initial term of 10 years. We have an optional renewal term of another 10.
Thank you.
I see no, oh, yes, Ellen.
So, with an optional renewal of 10 more, I mean, is this a permanent structure you would keep forever in Seward, or?
We generally intend for these to be permanent structures. They're expensive to move. It's really a hassle. So if we can maintain a good relationship with a landowner, we tend to stay on these sites indefinitely.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public wish to comment on this item? Seeing no one else, I will close the public comment portion of the public hearing and return to the council for further discussion.
I guess the only question I have is, have we heard from any neighbors with any concerns or anything?
I don't believe so, or otherwise Tim would have told us.
Yeah, we have not heard anything from anybody.
Okay, I'm good.
And I'd just note that in working with Allo through the administration, they probably turned over every stone they possibly could. If there was a lot that had any sort of space on it that would fit aesthetically, physically, otherwise, we gave them a laundry list of sites, and they did their due diligence to either try to find willing partners or, rule them out for other specific purposes. But they did a good job trying to look everywhere, so.
Was there any other further comments or questions? I entertain a motion. I think we just need a motion to approve
sorry.
on this one, right?
Make a motion.
Motion to approve,
Second.
a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wilken, Beck, Camper, Colterman, Miller, Singleton, Streisand, Hendricks, 8-0.
Alright, item number 3 is also a public hearing. Amendment to the City of Seward Unified Land Development Ordinance, Chapter 410, zoning and subdivision, Article 3.7, use types, pet services.
Cancel.
We cancel this item?
Yep.
Okay,
This was a request by a citizen, because you can request to have ULDO amendments,
oh, okay,
and they canceled it after we had already issued the public hearing notices and everything
oh,
else.
okay.
So,
So with that, we move on to the next item. Item 4 is also a public hearing. Amendment to the City of Seward Unified Land Development Ordinance, Chapter 410, zoning and subdivision, Article 41.4, stormwater management. Welcome.
Thank you, thank you. Good evening. So I have two documents in front of you today, only the second one, we're asking for a public hearing. These two are both on stormwater management. The second one from Article 410, which is our Unified Land Development Ordinance. Section 41.4. Section 41 is essentially designed all of the utilities for new development. And with Prairie View being approved, other development that has been proposed in and around Seward, we think this is an appropriate time to add to our ordinance to cover stormwater management, which we've had a small section in the past, but it has proven to be inadequate in terms of what we want the outcomes to be. So we find a lot of developments under construction in particular, or even post-construction, they end up impacting other existing residences. And so both of these together will give us the ability to actually enforce some requirements on developers and on homeowners association as the development is completed and aged. So they do operate in unison. The first one, which will come up, I believe, next month for a public hearing, 337, would be brand new, all 17 pages would be brand new. This has a lot of the definitions and a lot of mostly don'ts. It has a few do's, but essentially it is a way for us to identify what we don't want in terms of stormwater discharges. Gives a mechanism for developing notices of violations, how you handle violations. There are ways to accept, so if it turns out to be a minor violation, there's a way to provide alternative compensatory actions. Second last page, 337.4.10. You can actually have people do community service. So if their violation is something simple, they dump used motor oil down a storm drain, technically is a violation, pollutes the natural waters of the state, waters of the US, and so there are not just monetary violations. Many communities have stormwater management, mostly communities larger or are growing like Seward is. So we did consult with other communities, including the big ones, Omaha and Lincoln, of course, Papillion, Gretna, smaller ones like Plattsmouth. We also mid-sized Grand Island, Kearney is an example, Norfolk, Columbus, quite a few in our areas. There's a lot of similarities. We primarily followed Norfolk's stormwater management ordinance for both these sections and adopted a great deal of what they have. We have gotten some comments already. We had one builder that's offered some comments on 41.4, on E6 on the third page in terms of soil stockpiles. Specifically, they've asked not to be required to cover that or surround it 360 degrees with silt fence, but instead have some, cover the downstream sides to make access to that pile. Not waste money where a silt fence on the high side would be essentially ineffective altogether. So there is this process I think we're still undergoing where we're refining, so we're not asking for a vote at this time to table this, actually, hold the public hearing until the next time, and we refine this and get a better version and incorporate all the comments that we have received.
We did receive, it was approved, it was tabled at the planning commission. The only comment they had was on, one of the exceptions was perimeter drains from foundations. They wanted clarity of what an active versus an inactive system. So active is essentially a pump. You have a sump pump, you pump water, and we'll clarify that exception. Actually, both are allowed. Whether you have perimeter drains that drain by gravity out to a storm sewer system, in some cases you can. You don't need a sump pump. Other cases you actually have to pump it up to the street gutter level, as an example. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. There's quite a bit of material here, but we do believe, especially with Prairie View coming on, that this does allow us to hold all developers to a common set of standards across Nebraska.
Thanks, Mike. Any questions or comments from the council?
I got one question. Mike, in the past, we've had some issues when developments are built that they don't end up being graded and built as like the hydrology study was specified. Is there anything in this, or is there anything in place going forward that makes sure that when the projects are built, that they're actually built the way they're intended to be designed, to work the way they're supposed to work? So we don't have something like happened on Augusta again?
Yeah, correct. So specific to Augusta, we are asking, there's a clause in here that allows us, requires the stormwater management to be to the extent of the subdivision. So there has been some subdivisions where the engineer is just 20% of the area, they just have not considered in their stormwater management plan, and they just let it go by gravity, whichever way it goes, and we've had some issues that are known. So we've added that. There's many additional requirements, but in specific to the extents, meaning you can't just say, well, we're bottling up this 80%, therefore that 20% is less than what was originally there. That's kind of how they interpreted in the past. So that one particular, it does give the homeowners permanent responsibility. So post-construction management then is actually responsibility of homeowners themselves. And so we eliminate that gray area where once it's built, everybody says, well, I just bought my house. And so specifically to your question, we have not found in other ordinances anywhere where we have that much teeth, as you described it. But we do plan with every development, just like Prairie View, to go over very carefully. And I do believe with Olson, their engineer, they've seen a lot of back and forth between the city and the engineer, and they understand the requirements. Primarily, they're developing to what they're used to in Lincoln for that one particular development. And so we'll, on the other side, in terms of enforcement, as these plans come forward, we'll have to be, it's still incumbent upon us to be very careful and diligent in reviewing those plans, then verifying. And so it does give right of entry as an example specifically, so at any time, for, during construction, pre-construction, post-construction, city is able to, anything that discharged in the storm sewer system, we're allowed to inspect within a structure, behind a fence, or out in the front yard, or wherever. And so there is some provision to allow us to inspect, monitor, install sampling equipment if necessary, and pursue that. So I do believe it gets us to where we need to be to address those issues.
Okay, thank you.
So, without creating brand new ones that nobody else
Right.
has.
So Mike, do we know everybody that's got a stormwater permit in Seward?
No, I don't, right, personally, so I don't have a list, and largely, so we have not required here a separate city permit for stormwater systems, as Lincoln does, so they have to get a separate permit. We do have in other areas a grading permit, so if you open up 5 acres of land, Some municipalities will require a permit for that, as an example. I talked with Tim, we do have one else where we don't think of grading permits the way to go. There is a state permitting process. It should be clear to anybody reading the ordinance that they are, when they are required to get a permit. But we do not have any mechanism in here to verify that, maintain a list as of yet, so.
Because we didn't do anything with PetSource either, did we?
PetSource has a comprehensive plan on their stormwater that we indeed reviewed, so I do believe, I've looked over it many times, I've been out there, I've put my head in manholes, storm manholes, sanitary manholes, and I do believe they have followed all of the requirements of their stormwater management plan.
Yeah, because most of the big factories here will probably have an MPDS permit.
Correct, that's correct. So, and their expansion, they have one in place as well, so. These get very lengthy, of course, and detailed, many pages long, a lot of text that's difficult to interpret, but I do believe they have followed, PetSource in particular has followed everything that they have stated in advance.
Ellen?
Regarding housing developments and homeowners,
Yes.
how do we propose to make people aware of this new requirement, new responsibility?
That's, I guess that's a question I'm not prepared to
Okay, that's
answer.
fine.
It's
That's fine.
probably, it's a good, we do post a lot of things in terms of Facebook. We did, we did have, obviously we have these public hearings. Some builders are aware of the requirements. I think we do intend on making those builders and developers acutely aware, right?
But I think it's very much needed as far as what we went through as they developed North Star and North Waverly Road. The developers would come in, and I always felt, council got a little pat on the head and said, oh, don't you worry about it. We've got it all covered, and we've got a plan, and it's all great. And then, the water came. So I think this is very much needed, and I appreciate all your efforts on this.
And I will say, with that, when it does rain and rain heavily, and in terms of engineering, there is a separate document that's gonna be coming forth. We do have a stormwater design standards. We will update that. That is referenced in these documents. And so they're adopted by reference. We'll be going through that and improving upon that. But as an example, they typically only have to look at 2-year, 10-year, and 100-year storms. And there's a lot more, the worst storm on average every 2 years, there's a lot of storms that are bad that are less than that tend to cause a lot of problems. So I think if it rains the worst it's rained in 20 years, I think people understand they have to put up with cooled water. I think the more impact is on the regular rains that happen a couple times a year. And so we'll try to change those standards so that they indeed do the right thing on those more frequent events, stormwater events.
Appreciate that. I think
Sure.
it's really important.
Next question, now Tim, they still are monitoring the water, like for spikes and everything like that, or have we had any spikes with anything going down the storms there?
Well, they do monitor that. We do have a lot of, by data, we do have a lot of stormwater that gets into the system. There's a number of ways it can enter, right? It can be old pipes, brick manholes, cracks in the structures, manholes. They're sealing all the manholes that are in the bottom of ditches that probably shouldn't have been designed to be put in the bottom of ditches in the beginning. But there's still, there's probably a factor of 6 between peak hour flow and the average wastewater flow. And so the vast majority of that, what we call infiltration and inflow, and a lot of that is just stormwater. Probably can't get that number below 3, but there's a lot of opportunity to reduce that. And obviously with this new wastewater plant that we're building, we have a discussion, we actually have a meeting with the state on Friday to kind of discuss what's possible in terms of, because they generally make us build that plant based on historical data, which is already in the past. Future, what we can do in the future, what they'll allow us. So they do monitor that on a regular basis, and hopefully we'll get some relief on the size of the wastewater plant.
Thank you, Mike. It is a public hearing, so I'll open the public comment portion of the public hearing. We open the public wishes to comment on item number 4. Please come forward at this time. Seeing no one wishing to comment, I will close the public comment portion of the public hearing. I understand the intent is to table this for tonight. Unless there's any other questions or comments from the council, we'll move on to the next item.
We need a motion to table.
I'll make a motion to
That's
table.
fine.
Second.
All right, the motion is second. Please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wilken, Beck, Camperth, Colterman, Miller, Singleton, Streisand, Hendricks, 8-0.
Under administrative items, we have a request from Mercy City Church for a party in the park event to be held on June 5th, 2022. Greg.
This is a public event, and the request came in from Mercy City Church to utilize the Plum Creek Sports Complex area. Due to the fact that it is taking up significant space on, in public parks, they made this request. Other than that, Derek, am I missing anything on that one?
No, sir.
There you go, that's it. So, usually we have these really significant ones, we just wanna get council approval on them.
Have
So-
they done this before?
I think this is the first time.
Any questions or comments from the council? Those to entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve the request.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wilken, Beck, Camperth, Colterman, Miller, Singleton, Streisand, Hendricks, 8-0.
Item 2 is a Seward Foundation application. Greg?
Yeah, periodically throughout the year, we get applications through the Seward Foundation. The foundation is set up for the beneficiaries of the city and the school district. And so applications come in, they're divided amongst those two entities, and whoever they, sometimes it's not fully obvious who they go to, in this case it is more obvious. Then they're sent on to those appropriate bodies for a recommendation by either the council or the school board, and then that goes ultimately to the foundation board who votes on it. We have 2 members of the council that serve on that board, and members of the school board that do as well. We received a application, we kinda didn't know what to do at first, but we got it figured out and worked very diligently with Greg Nelson for an application from Illuminate Seward. And when we focused it down, essentially what it came down to, and Greg can talk more about that, he is here today, is they're looking to kind of do a demo and come in and put in the controllers and all the lights for City Hall to install the system that will ultimately implement it through what's anticipated to be the Illuminate Seward project. And so, from the city concern, our only concerns were labor and just how is it gonna get up there. And I think that's gonna be utilized and covered by Vinny and his crew that did the magical lights of Seward. And that's who the vendor will be to get the lights. We'll initially control the controller probably until a full build out of the downtown area were to take place. And also just matching the colors, that's a big one during like the Christmas season and things like that, making sure can't think of what I wanna say in regards to the temperature of the light matches the hue and temperature of all the lights in downtowns. And that was one of my first questions when I first met with the group with Illuminate Seward. And Vinny assured me we could temp these lights to about any temperature you want to because they're fully LED, and you can make extreme adjustments to get about any color grade you want out of them. So again, if we installed them and we didn't move forward, we didn't want to have lights that were just on City Hall that didn't match the rest of the downtown lights. And so that should not be a concern. But Greg's here, and so I can turn over to Greg if he wants to jump up and say anything else.
Your council, thank you. Yeah, Greg and I have been working together for a couple of weeks on this, and essentially what we'd like to do is just what he said, make City Hall kind of a showpiece to continue driving the Illuminate Seward campaign. Obviously, drive donations as people see what we think is gonna be a really neat project. City Hall is a pretty obvious choice of buildings for a few different reasons, not the least of which it sits on the busiest intersection in town. So there's a lot of traffic going by that would be able to see the lights. It would also check one of the big boxes on our public building checklist, which we're trying to cover, the library, the band shell, et cetera. The controller that we need for this, the pricing at $7,050 for this project. The controller is a little bit more robust than we would need for just one building, but it's enough of a controller that then he says we can operate that entire block. So we thought it made sense to upgrade the controller a little bit for later use down the highway, down Highway 34 to the east and around to the library, and possibly completely around the library. Really, that's kind of the gist of it. Structurally, we took a look at City Hall. There's really nothing that inhibits the lights being installed there. Vinny and I have both taken a look at that. Power is readily available for the time being. No structural issues. Greg didn't have any particular legal issues, I don't think, or any objection from the city standpoint. So we thought it just made sense as a great place to start the project.
Thanks, Greg. Any questions from the council?
Greg, this is $7,050 to do City Hall.
Correct.
I've asked this before and I didn't get an answer, so I'll ask it again. What is the entire cost that you would envision for all of the downtown area that you eventually would like to cover?
$140,000.
Greg, what's the style of the lights? Are they like a robe? Are they almost invisible during the day, or?
Yeah, they are. They actually, to make them secure so they won't blow down in a big storm and what have you, and won't have some of the issues that the older style of lights like are up there now, they actually fit in a channel that mounts to the building, and then they snap into that channel. It's easiest way to describe it, it's kind of a hybrid between what's up there now, the older bulb style, and a rope light. It's much smaller bulbs than what are up there now, and of course all LED.
Are they individual bulbs as far as from a replacement standpoint? Or do
They're-
you have to replace an entire strip?
They're diodes, Josh, and Vinny would have to really speak to that. I think they come in sections, so I believe you would have to replace a section, and the ones I've seen are 8 feet. So my belief is you'd kind of unplug the ends and plug in a new 8-foot section and go to it that way.
So has Larry been involved in this?
Not yet. We breached with Larry when we initially discussed this. Our discussion was only, right now, we're doing some of the maintenance, not the electrical maintenance as in work that electricians would do, but bulb replacements, minimal security back onto buildings and things like that. Our anticipation, as Greg talked about when he met with you last time, is likely that the maintenance would still be covered by the city to get up and do that general part. Any of the electrical that require electrician is not to be performed by the city. This will also give the opportunity for our crews to go up with Vinny and see them in action and ask questions and discuss, you know, the lift truck and stuff, like how are we gonna replace this, what are we gonna do, and it's gonna give them a general idea of what sort of maintenance timeframes this may create for them. Because they have to consider that at least on a minimum every year for the purpose of just the holiday. That maintenance time will probably expand. We'll probably have to have some general one where we say, you know, we'll go through the maintenance of them quarterly. You know, if we have big outages, we can't let that sit for 11 months to go deal with when we get close to the holiday season. We'll have to deal with it with the way this is proposed, going out there more often.
So I'm assuming that
our guys would have to put in the GFCIs, cause I'm assuming how many strands can you run on one circuit, you know?
A lot.
Yeah,
They're talking about all of City Hall on one circuit.
well, wow.
The power usage with the LEDs is minimal. The maintenance is actually one of the big benefits of the new lights. The expected maintenance-free lifespan of this lighting is 25 to 30 years. And I say maintenance-free, they're outdoors, so, you know, big storms or some other force majeure kind of event could impact them, but as far as just general wear and tear and weather, there's no expected maintenance for basically 25 years.
So did you figure in the cost of running conduit and outlets and that as well into this proposal?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments from the council?
The only one I have, Greg, is you guys have in your application, you participated at Seward Gives Day. Do you guys have amount of what you received during that day or throughout the month so far?
Just over 6,000.
Yeah, a little over 6,000 from Seward Gives.
Any other questions or comments from the council? Otherwise, we entertain a motion.
Move to approve. Second.
The motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wilken, Beck, Camperth, Colterman, Miller, Singleton, Streisand, Hendricks, 8-0.
Item number 3, consideration of a request from Bottle Rocket Brewing LLC to extend the job creation loan requirements related to their CDBG grant, Economic Development Loan Fund EDLF award. Greg.
If you remember back, I think it was in February of 2020, this time frame all mixes together for me now. We approved 2 CDBG loans that would be paid back ultimately to Send, because we wanted to close out our CDBG program. If we kept the income coming back to the city would be required to return that to the state. And so we sent it to Send. Send could then reuse it over and over and over again. Pursuant to those, we did one for Cafe on the Square and we did one for Bottle Rocket. Bottle Rocket had the more extreme job creation opportunity, and then the pandemic literally dropped on our head shortly after this took place. And so the request was, obviously they were shut down in regards to the brewery for a potential portion of time. And so I believe a lot of their coverage was just being handled by the owners for the most part, Brian and Jason and Gerald in there. And they don't count and can't count towards any sort of job elements of this just because of the nature of the way they're set up. So they needed to generate these jobs organically in other elements of their service and enterprise. And so with that time frame, they were not able to meet the given time for the job creations. That's an 1.63 FTEs over a period of 2 years, in addition to where they were. So you had to take their baseline of all their employees on the day we approved it and then add those additional ones. And so they came back and made a request to have the time frame for just the job creation element of this extended, not any term of the loan itself. Their repayment and requirements for the loan will remain on track. But this gives them an extra 2 years on the back end of this matter to create those jobs and go above and beyond. And so this one was sent back to the CDBG Reuse Loan Committee. And so Gerald and crew and Kelly from Sen attended that. Ultimately, it was recommended for approval by that body, and then final approval has to come from the council. I know Gerald's here, so he can speak to any of the specifics of what went on, but that's kind of where we ended up with on that one. The Cafe on the Square was able to do their, but it was significantly less. I think it was 0.4 jobs or something like that, FTEs. But they were a smaller amount, that's why. So
I'll make a motion to move forward with this.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second, is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes, please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wilken, Beck, Camperth, Colterman, Miller, Singleton, Streisand, Hendricks, 8-0.
Item number 4 is update on the Wellness Center following the May 10th ballot. Greg.
Yes, so, tonight I just want to give you kind of an update on different items that are going on, and then we'll have some formal action items, in the meeting and meetings to come. We had the election on Tuesday, May 10th. Ultimately, it was a successful, ballot initiative to increase the sales tax at 0.5%. And so one of the first things is through the Department of Revenue at the state, we need to signal to them our intent for a date to implement the beginning of the sales tax. Originally, when we discussed this, I think we were throwing around because we didn't really know any different, but we felt like it was an appropriate time. January 1st, well, in the letter to us, they said, based on the date you approved it on the vote, you can be as early as October 1st. So I don't know any strategic value in moving it up. And so I still think the ordinance that we'll probably propose to you is to start off with will be January 1st, 2023. That would be the date that the sales tax is going. It also gives us an opportunity to just let the community know that the sales tax will change. And so adjustments to cash registers and everything else that people may need to undertake can be done. And so to do that, we'll need an ordinance, as we have all of our other sales tax in. And so we'll propose bringing an ordinance at a future meeting, probably the next meeting. We have like till approximately September to do this, but we want to get these official things out of the way. We also need to provide them certified copies from the county clerk in regards to the election results, certify the perimeter of the city so that they know exactly where it will be implemented and where it won't. I don't think those boundaries have changed much, if ever, in the last who knows how many years. So maybe the rail campus is probably our biggest one, but I know that we've provided that information in the past on the annexation. So, but we'll give an updated certified map. So that's kind of the next direct step. That's the first thing that has to happen, is bringing forth that ordinance. After that, tomorrow, I will meet with our bond counsel along with our finance director, Nick Wolf. We'll begin the process of just understanding the undertaking and the requirements, timelines, and other matters that are related to the bond now that it's been approved. Or not the bond, but the vote has been approved. And so they'll start giving us some advice on timing. I think probably the biggest concern we're gonna have and what their outlook is, and I guess it's just guessing, is looking at our different funding options and mechanisms and how much funding we generate. When is the most opportune time to put this bond out in front of you for a vote and take it to bondholders? I think our concern is probably interest rates. The longer we go without issuing the bond, you're gonna risk higher interest rates. We also may be generating more grant revenue and other things that would push the principal amount down. So you're gonna see an inverse relationship there, and we're gonna try and monitor that throughout. We'll probably just hit a few different marks in our discussion tomorrow and say, hey, if we bond on the low end